Hi everyone, I'm back again with another video for you. This time I'm going to do a briar rose, and please take no notice of the lip syncing. Unfortunately, when I recorded this video I forgot to switch the microphone off, so you won't have to watch me for very long. I hope you all had a good Christmas, and welcome back to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you've got any comments, please leave them at the bottom of the video below. And if you've got any suggestions about anything at all, whatever it is, or any questions, then please do get back to me. A lot of people seem to be a bit afraid of saying anything, and don't forget to like the videos. And I'm just waiting for my video to start now so that I can see what I was doing at that particular point in time. So here we go. So this is the flower that I'm going to do. I decided to pick on a yellow one because I had some paste left from some flowers that I did for my brother's golden wedding anniversary. This is it's not the wild variety of a briar rose. These are the cultivated varieties. This cutter that I'm going to use here is a Camellia Cutter out of a set of different sizes. So I've used next to the smallest cutter for this. Now, as you can see on the table, I've also got a rose petal cutter. You could use that, or even a heart cutter, although that may be a little bit wide. If you are going to use the rose petal cutter, then when you cut your petal out, use the pointed end of your petal cutter to take a little nick out of the top. And as I'm showing you there, you can do use different sizes depending on what sort of size the flower is that you want to do, but they are a lot smaller than a normal rose cutter. Whoops, dropped it there. The leaves on the briar rose are different to the normal rose. They come in a set of 7 leaves, all more or less the same size. So I use the smallest cutter in the rose leaf cutters to make the leaves for that particular spray. So I'm just going to get the paste out that I'm going to use. Now the paste I'm using is one that I've been experimenting with. I've been trying a lot of new paste lately. This one is, it's got no eggs in it, no egg whites. It's a new paste that I found on Facebook. So if you have a look on, on YouTube, if you have a look on YouTube, there are lots of different people doing different types of paste on there, so you can get loads of different ideas from that. I can't remember who it was that did this video, but I'm using a very, very pale lemon paste here that I'm rolling out now, because like all the flowers that we do, start off with the paler colour of the paste that you're going to use, and then dust it to the colour that you want it to be. That way you can get more variation in colour. So here I'm rolling the ridge using my trusty little ridge rolling pin. If you can get hold of one of these, they're brilliant. If you do a lot of flowers and you've got loads to do, you can do lots of petals out all at the same time. So as usual, I'm only going to cut one petal out because I've already got all my bits and pieces already made. So there's no point in me spending loads of time cutting loads of petals out when you can be getting on to the nitty gritty, putting things together. So like as usual, I'm going to thin the edges with my ball tool. For those that haven't done flowers before, you probably find a ball tool a lot easier to use than a dog bone tool. I changed over with my students at college for that reason, because I found a lot of people were struggling with the dog bone tool. And the metal ones are really good because they don't stick as easily. So you can use quite a fine wire for this. Because the petals are quite small, I'm using a 28 gauge wire. A white wire as usual for petals, green wires for leaves. And get that up as far as you can, so that if you break it, then there's a better chance of being able to repair it. Onto your tool pad to tool thin your edges. I always find thinning the edges before you do any veining is more preferable to veining your petal and then thinning your edges, because you lose some of the veining on the edges if you do it that way. So I'm using a rose petal veiner here to do this. I'm putting it up into the part where I can get the most detail. Give it a good press. Then you need to shape the petal before putting it onto your bobble foam or whatever else it is you're going to use. So make sure that you always bring the bottoms together so that when you tape it onto your centre, it fits around the centre. If you leave it flat, it won't fit properly. As you can see there, I've already got some petals made. So onto your bobble foam, so your petals curve back a little bit. Shape your petal and then put it back onto your foam. So you can leave that to dry now. So first of all, this is a centre the way that I've done it. So what I've done here is I've made a small cushion of paste that I've put onto a wire. So for this, you can use a green wire for this, because this is all going to be taped over, so you're not going to see it. So if you get a pair of long nose pliers and bend your wire and curve it round, so you've got like a sort of a flat hook top on the do your hook and then turn it over again, so you've got something for your paste to grab onto. Bit difficult to describe when I'm trying to remember what I did at the time when I did the video, because this has been done a few days afterwards. So small ball of paste onto the top of your wire and bring it underneath so that it attaches to your wire and stays kaput, put on your wire. And spend a little bit of time shaping it to make sure that it's well and truly onto your wire. You don't want it coming off when you're putting everything together. So here I'm going to do the pollen on it straight away. Normally I would let this dry before I do that, but for demonstration purposes I'm doing it straight away. So then you've got your pollen, which is made with ground rice or semolina or whatever it is, into a little pot with some powder colour. Give it a good shake and you've got your pollen. Same as the commercial pollen that you can buy, just a hell of a lot cheaper to make it yourself. And of course, then you've already got all your different colours already made up, depending on what flowers you're going to do. I'll coat the whole of the top with the glue and then dip it into the pollen, get the pollen all the way around, make sure you're totally covered. Doesn't matter if it's not covered underneath, because that you're not going to see that bit, but the top part is very important because that's the part that's going to be seen. Make sure if you've got some on your board that you make sure you clear it out of the way. Wet wipes are a good way of doing this. Baby wipes I use a lot because they come in handy for cleaning jobs like that down. So the next thing is to make the stamens, which are made with cotton. Here I'm using some ready coloured cotton. This is a polyester thread. Normally, if I'm using, if I'm wanting to colour it myself, you make sure that you get hold of cotton and wind it round a couple of fingers to get as many as you want on there. I think that I wound it round about 150 times. A lot, I know. I'm not going to do this here. I'm just showing you how I started, but you can see how I've done this in some of my earlier videos, particularly things like the hellebore, where I've made the cotton centres. I'm trying to think what other videos I've done with the stamens in. Put it together in a loop when you've got it there, and put a fine wire round it. And in this case, I actually made enough cotton so that I can pop the centre through the cotton. So what you need to do is to spray it with some hairspray, stiff hairspray, and get your stamens how you want them, and then pop the stamens into some pollen when you've done a little bit of glue on the edges and onto the inches pollen to get your stamens. Sorry if I sound as though I'm babbling a little bit here, but it's a little bit difficult, like I say, when you're doing a voiceover after you've done the video. So that's all the bits and pieces done for the flower. I've already made the leaves. You know how to make leaves, so I'm sure you can manage with that. If you have got any doubt and you are a newbie, then go back to one of my other videos to see how I made the leaves on there. As I say, if you've got any questions about anything that I'm doing, don't forget to leave comments below. So, to colour the petals now, I'm using a light yellow colour. I'm just trying to think what colour this was that I used. It depends on what make you're using, really, but as you can see, it's a fairly light colour, like a banana colour or a melon colour, I would say, that I've used on there. I use a lot of edible art colours, so if you go onto the edible art site at edible art world of colour.co.uk, have a look at their colours on there, and you can probably see which is the best. Again, it's your preference. It depends on what colour you want your flower to be. I went online onto a site that does the wild roses. I'm just trying to think whose site it was. It's one of the well-known growers, rose growers anyway, and they had quite a variety of briar roses from a deep reddy pink through to a almost white pink, and the yellow ones on there. There's 2 or 3 different yellow ones on there. This one's a colour that I don't know where I got that one from. It's not one of my usual colours that I've used on there, but if you recognise the top of the pot, then that could help. As you can see, it's a very, it's quite a palish yellow, not the palest one, but if you haven't got a pale yellow colour, if you've got a deep yellow, always have some white in your armoury, because you can always mix it to the colour you want. So I'm dusting from the top of the petal down, but leaving a little part of the bottom of the petal, the pale lemon colour. That way I find it looks a lot more realistic, rather than covering the whole of the petal, making it all look the same. You might as well have coloured the whole of the petal that colour and just left it. But the whole point of doing the dusting in the first place is to get these sort of faded effects on whatever you're doing. Same as when you're doing leaves and things like that, where you get a paler edge and a deeper centre. So once you've done that, then we can go on to building the flower then. Sorry about the hands. It looks a bit. I have a habit of talking with my hands. It fascinates a lot of people, but what I've done there is I've done a rosebud in the same way as you would do a normal rosebud for a rose, because they do look more or less the same when they're just starting to open. So I've done a part open rose there that I'm colouring with the same colours that I've just used on the petals. Most of you have already done roses anyway, so you know how to do the centres. But there again, like I say, if you haven't done them before, have a look for my rose video on my channel. It was the first one that I ever did for YouTube, and you can see how I made the centres of the roses. I'll get rid of the paper there with the colour on out of the way. I do steam everything when I've finished doing them, but I prefer to put the flowers together. Sometimes even to do the spray before you do the steaming as well, because then you don't have to. If you're using a kettle to do it, then it just is a lot quicker to do it that way rather than doing each flower individually and risk burning your hands and things like that. I have got a steamer that's done for flowers, but you can buy them for steaming clothes and things like that rather than ironing them. It's just a steam thing, and it looks very much the same as the sugarcraft ones. They're just a lot cheaper. So if you get all your petals together now, so you should have altogether, you should have 10 petals altogether. There are 2 layers on the briar rose, or on the particular variety that I've done. So if you get your centre that you've already got together there, and get your petals and bend your wire down so that you can attach it to the centre. I apologise because I've gone a bit out of shot. Sometimes I forget to move my camera because I don't have a camera person, and trying to put the flower together and watch the camera is a little bit difficult. But I'm sure in a minute I think I'll remember and move the camera up so you can see what I'm doing. There we are. Oh, the things we have to do when you do YouTube. When you've got these petals in, if you just bring them up a little bit so that the next layer of petals sit back a little bit, you'll see that in a second when I've got the first layer of petals into the flower. As my mother would say, you'll listen to yourself now in future to make sure that you don't make this mistake again, and remember to switch the microphone on. Bless her, she's probably watching down on me now and wondering what we're doing with all this technology now, because that wasn't around when my parents were around. So things have changed a lot since then. So tape down in between. The reason why I tape down in between, I know for the second repeating myself in all the videos, is that when you attach the next layer of petals, it's easier to keep them in place because the wires have got something to grip onto. So start your tape off again at the top underneath your first layer of petals, and then start in your second layer, making sure you put each of the petals in between the first layer. So where you've got your join, then the next petal goes behind that join. As I've done there, I brought the petals up a little bit so that the next layer are going to sit further back. There we are. And then just like you did with this first layer, then add in all of your petals one at a time. Just take your time with these things, you know, because sometimes if you try to rush it, you find that all sorts of things can go wrong. So take your time, don't rush. Those of you that are watching from some of the groups that I've posted these videos on Facebook, some very talented people on there. I've been watching all your work there, and there's some very clever people about making flowers, you know. And I know sometimes people that are just starting find it a little bit daunting, but if you spend time doing it, then you will get there. Just have a bit of faith in yourself. So that's the last petal going in now. And tape down to the bottom. Just run out of tape there, so I'm just adding a little bit more tape on just to finish the bottom off so that all the wires are all taped well in. If any petals have moved around at this particular point, this is where you can move them around. Once you've taped them in, it's a lot bit easier to get them into place and get them to stay. And you can pull your petals back a little bit at the back there, so you've just got the that 2 layer there. Just go around through your flowers and make sure that you've got them all as you want them. It's a pretty little flower, is this? You know, it just makes a change from doing your normal bog standard roses, because there are lots of different varieties. Now, the calyx I'm going to use, it's an old one, is this? You can't get hold of them. They've been out of production a long time. I'm going to put the calyx on the back. Now, the calyx on the back is very similar to a normal rose, probably a little bit smaller because it's not a big flower. So, like before, a paler shade of the green that you're going to use for anything. As I've said before, I only use one green, either Christmas green from Sugar Flare or Holly and Ivy from Squire's Kitchen. I find it's the best green because you only need a green for the background. You can do the rest of the colour. There, I forgot to grease my board. That's why it's stuck on my rolling pin. So there we are. Back onto the board. And cut out your calyx. Make sure you've got a good cut before you take it apart. And if need be, if you can't get, particularly with some of these, just get something with a sharp edge just to pull out the pieces in between your sepals on your calyx, and pull that away before you take it away, so you don't pull any of the pieces off. Then that needs to go onto your pad to thin the edges. And thin your edges with your ball tool. Now it's up to you with the next stage whether you do this or not, but there are some little fine cuts in some of the. I always turn it over so that the side that the white fat is on is the side that I glue to put onto my roses. But if you want to, you can put some little nicks into some of your sepals before you put it onto your onto your flower. You don't have to do that, but you can if you want. Bring that up to the back of your flower and try and get your the points of your calyx in between your petals, where each of the petals meet. That's generally how the calyx fits on your flower. And to make sure that they stay in place. And if need be, as I'm doing there, I'm using it's actually a dentist tool that I'm using there, which is a form of Dresden Tool. That I bought one of the flower shows, but I have seen them online. I've seen them on eBay and various other places. You can buy those online. Sometimes they're better than the plastic ones, because if you're heavy-handed, sometimes you can break the ends of the tools off. So here I'm making the hip for the back of the rose. So a tiny ball of paste. It's only about the size of a small pea, or a petit pois, as we were taught when I was learning flowers, which is a French word for a small garden pea. Bring it up to the back of your calyx and a little bit of glue added just at the top of the wire so that the hip sticks to the back of your calyx. Bring that up and then shape it. There we are. So that's the hip on the back of the flower. There is another way of doing it. You can do it the Mexican hat way, but I just find this way is a lot easier, because most people, especially if you've got a lot of petals wired on where the tape's on, it's not so bad with a rose where you haven't done wired petals. You haven't got as much bulk at the back, but if it is quite thick at the back where you've added a lot of petals, then sometimes you find that it will tear if you do the other method, and it can get very frustrating if it's not going right. So doing it this way is a lot easier. When you're doing competitions and that, the judges may look at it in a different way, but that's a different matter. You would spend a lot more time on your flowers if you are entering competitions, to make sure all your details are right. So there we are, that's your finished flower. So the next thing is to do to put the leaves together. So I've used sort of a darkish green on the leaves. So I'm using the same colour on the calyx. Just to give that same sort of finish as your leaves. So I can't remember what green I used for that. I think I used Alpine green. I think it was that I used on that from Sugar Flare. But whatever is the equivalent colour, it depends on the colour of your flower. Generally, the green, the darker the colour of your flower, the darker the green that you use on your leaves and your calyx. So it's your judgment as to which is the best sort of colour. I would say sort of like a mid-green for a pale coloured flower, like a very pale pink or a white or anything like that, and a darker colour on something that's a dark, deep red or a burgundy. I would use a much deeper green for that. The advantage we use in powder colours, lots of different colours in powder colours, is that you have a much wider variety and they are cheaper to buy generally than the paste colours. So if you just get yourself an arrangement of basic colours in your paste colours and then a wider range of colours in your powder colours to finish off the texture of the petals and leaves that you want to achieve. Now I'm going to tape these together into a group of, what did I say, 7 leaves. So you start off with your first leaf at the top, the same as you would on a normal arrangement of rose leaves. Tape down. I always start a little bit below and then push the tape up to the base of the leaf. The reason for that is so that I don't break the leaf by getting my fingers in the way when I'm taping things together. And do that with the same with all of the leaves that you're doing. Pop the next 2 leaves in, continue taping down, leave about ½ an inch in between each set of leaves, and then pull your wires down to get the leaves right down to the wire. If you're doing leaves where there's a bit of a stem on it, then obviously you don't pull them down. But with rose leaves, they are very tight into the main stem. So that's why we do that with each of these. But as I say, I always do it with them a little bit higher up, so that once you've got them taped in, then you can pull your leaves down tight to the wire without catching them and breaking them. You just need to find out which wires they are you've got and pull them in. You can soon find out when they start moving. And then tape down again another ½ an inch to put the final set of leaves in. I must say, doing a voiceover is a little bit more difficult than it is when you're doing it when you remember to switch the microphone on, because that way you know exactly what you're doing. I don't know what I'm saying at this particular point in time, and since I can't read lips, I can't see my lips, I couldn't tell you whether I was saying exactly the same thing now. So once you've got your final leaves in and you've got them down to the wire, then tape down to the base. Break off the end of your tape, and then you can start adjusting your leaves and getting them into the correct position. I always start with them going down in a line like that because I find it a lot easier to get, so you can get all your leaves level in the right position. Just be very careful when you're getting hold of your leaves to make sure that you don't break them. And as I've done there, just bend them back a little bit so that the next set of leaves don't get in the way, so you don't damage anything when you're doing this. There we are. So there you've got your set of leaves. Obviously I've lost something there, so I'm trying to find it. I have a habit of doing that, so I apologise for that. So what I'm going to do now is, rather than varnishing each of the leaves separately, I'm varnishing the whole set of leaves once I've put them together. Sometimes it makes it easier to do that way. It just depends on which way you want to work with it. Sometimes people find it easier to do them before they put them together, but with something like this, it's probably quicker to varnish all of your leaves all in one go. If you haven't got the varnish, as I've mentioned before, then obviously to get the shine on the leaves, you need to steam them. The only problem with that is that you need to steam them, let them dry, steam them again, let them dry, and steam them again and let them dry in between until you get the shine on the leaves that you want. So it takes far more time to build up the shine on your leaves that you want to achieve. Whereas with the varnish, I'm using a full varnish here, you get the full effect in one go. And it also depends on how much time you've got to do it as well. If you're doing something at last minute, then obviously this is a lot faster than doing it with the steaming method, because you've got to give yourself enough time to be able to do these jobs. The varnish does dry quickly anyway, so within a few minutes they're ready to put together into a spray. And make sure you clean your brush with some isopropyl. As you can see there, I've got a little jar which I've got some isopropyl in just for cleaning the brushes. So I know it looks a bit murky, but don't throw it away. Keep that just for cleaning your brushes in, and you can make that last for quite a long time before you need to replace it. Saves having to keep using a fresh lot of isopropyl every time you do it, because washing them in soap and water doesn't work the same way as the isopropyl does. You can't always get it out. So here I've got all my bits and pieces made, ready to put together into a spray. So I've got 2 roses and a bud there to put into a spray. So, like always, start off with the smallest flower at the beginning, which in this case is the bud, which by the looks of it, looks as though I've forgotten to colour the calyx on it. Or I've put... No, I've forgotten the hip on it. Slap on the hand for not doing my blue pizza bit in advance. Just in case you hadn't noticed, I've spilt some of my pollen on the side there, so make sure that you move things like that out of the way when you're doing it. Don't do as I've done. Do as I say, not as I do. Because I work in a small area when I'm doing these videos, sometimes it's very easy to knock things over if you're not very careful. A lot of my students kept knocking the glue pots over because it was in the way, and they used to go through loads of glue because they didn't screw the top on the pot before they started doing it. Because I always use these little jars with the brush in, so that when you're doing jobs like gluing, you're not having to look for a brush to do the job. So if you start your tape off underneath your bud, I'm using half width tape here. I tend not to use 1/4 inch tape because it's too thin, and most people would find that it breaks. I mean, half width tape can sometimes break as well. And then I put in another set of leaves at the beginning. It helps to frame your flowers by putting your leaves in behind. So if you put a set of leaves in, like I've just done there, then it shows your flower up. When I first started making flowers, I used to hate making leaves, so I try and avoid it. But unfortunately, when you make a spray of flowers, if there's no leaves in it, it doesn't quite look right. So the next thing to do to put your rose in is to bend your wire up a bit so that you don't catch your petals on the bud that you put in. If you get your pliers and just bend it up like that, and then pop that in, then continue taping that together. You could use full width tape for doing this when you're putting things together, because it doesn't matter if you thicken it up a little bit, because that's what you're doing is building your spray together. So you might find that full width tape is easier to use. It just depends on how good you are with your tape. I mean, you know yourself which is the easiest way for you, and like everything else, practice makes perfect. So as you go along, you might find that you might get away with a thinner piece of tape when you've done a few sprays together. Now, as you notice, I've put the rose slightly to one side. I haven't put it directly behind, because if you're only putting a few flowers together there, if you put them directly behind each other, they don't look right. And then again, the next rose that I'm doing, I'm putting that slightly to the other side as well. Last thing you want is a straight line of flowers going down, because it'd look a bit odd. And flowers don't grow like that anyway. And a florist wouldn't put a spray together like that either. If I remember rightly, I had a bit of problem with the tape spinning, twisting round. That's the only trouble with using thinner tape like the half-width tape and that. Sometimes it can get a bit twisted when you're stretching it, so you have to go back and strain it out to continue doing what you're doing. So I'm just taping down to make sure that that rose is securely in. So then come back up, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tape another set of leaves into one side. I'm not making it like a normal spray, because this is not meant to be like a bouquet type spray. I'm trying to make this into a spray that looks sort of like a natural twig, branch that you've taken off of a rose tree, with the leaves as they would probably be growing together with the roses. So I'm pop that in underneath. And then once you've taped that down, then you can pull that out to the side to get it in the position that you would like to have it in. Tape right down to the end, make sure everything's securely in. Then you can bring your leaves out to frame the flower, and then just bend your stem around a little bit so that it looks a bit more. Flowers don't grow in straight lines. You tend to find that they do tend to bend a little. And as I've said before, sometimes in nature you have to move things around to make them look natural. So use your long nose pliers to bend the spray into the shape that you're trying to achieve. And I've put a bit of a curve on it there. So there we are. That's my spray of briar roses. Hope you've enjoyed the video, and don't forget to subscribe. It's free to subscribe, and if you've got any comments, leave them below, and also give us a like. So I'll see you in the next video, and take care and stay safe. See you soon.